The lesson here is from Galatians 4:8 through 11. We're going to look at treachery versus assurance. And this passage is specifically dealing with Paul. He becomes more precise and shows that the desire of the Galatians, by what they're accepting with the false teachers, their desire is showing that they want to be re-enslaved. And the lesson is going to point out basically that this is an affront. It is traitorous to do that when we consider all that God has done to redeem us and to bring us into his family and to make us his servants. To go back and re-enslave ourselves to self-righteousness or to weak and beggarly elements or to prior practices is traitorous. And so please take time to read the details of the lesson so you see how the flow of thought goes through there. Lesson objectives: to see that faith in what I do is traitorous to the Father, and to see that what matters above all is that we are known of God. And so those are going to be the two primary points in the opening part of the lesson. Be a verse by verse, just simple explanations so you understand what those verses are saying, and hopefully you can explain those verses to the people. And then the second part of the lesson is going to explain why Paul is saying that and give a little bit more detail. There are three main points that you're going to get to in the lesson as you begin to make application: the weight of slavery. And so we look into the teachings of Romans chapter 6 and how we were initially freed from the law of sin, but it's important to realize that sin is not just some gross immoral act. Sin is also sin of self-righteousness. And then the weight of God's acceptance that we have in Christ is the second major point you'll see there as you turn towards application in your lesson. And then the weight of treachery. And it's healthy to continually affirm and root out these tendencies that we have. And so remember, Paul is writing to believers who have already believed in salvation by grace through faith, and he's showing how it's nonsensical to go back to living or believing, feeling, having a conscience that is bound by works of self-righteousness. In this case, the Judaizers are teaching and adding circumcision to Jesus Christ, but Paul is writing to the Galatians, telling them, in essence, that this is you going back to slavery. And so make sure you take time to look at the application there so that you can bring it into your time, our time today, and it will help people hopefully not revert back to a works maintenance gospel. Now, in the end, Christians who show a desire to return to weak and wanting elements are those who have unwittingly accepted another gospel. Remember, that's the premise of the letter here. They are people who are ignorant of their slide into the religion of moralism. We all have this tendency because of our sinful nature, and it is important to regularly affirm this to be a traitorous act against what God has accomplished in Jesus Christ. The remedy then is not to do more work for the Father, but to believe more deeply the truth that we are absolutely known of God. And so I hope you'll understand as you study the lesson, you'll understand just a brief overview, how the brief overview covers the highlights of that lesson. So it's hard to put everything together in just a short set of slides. But again, the main two primary thoughts there, that it is treachery, it is traitorous to declare the sufficiency of Jesus when I'm saved, but then live like he's not enough and like I'm not pleasing in God's eyes after I'm saved. It's an about face. And then secondly, Paul makes the profound point in the lesson, in the letter, that the supreme knowledge is not our knowledge, but rather that we are known of God. And of course, being known of God implicates a relationship that now we have with God. And so important to make sure you understand that truth. And I hope it's a blessing, and I hope you understand it as you teach it to your classes.